We on? Hello and good evening, everyone, or good day, or night, depending where you are. There is just a lot to catch up on as we lurch toward normal, whatever that may be, over here in the Holy Land. Literally, this let me explain what I mean by that. We haven't had any sirens or missiles or rockets or general like, even you can see, like, in the news, they're like finding other things to report. Suddenly the Israeli news is reporting about some scandal with the labor union. It's like, that is like not news anymore, like, not after 2 years of war and God knows what. But I mean, there's still a lot of updates. But there's, like, for instance, today, this is how it messes with your head. Now, in Jerusalem, that's where I live. There, you don't get flight patterns. There's no commercial airliners flying overhead. Like, I grew up in New York, and I know, like, right over our house there was like the pathway to JFK, and it was like every 5 minutes or even less. There was planes going over, so you get used to that. It's always in the background. Now here, there's nothing, and eventually you get used to nothing, and then when you do hear a plane, you're like, oh my God, what's that? Why? What's happening? And and so we got used to then planes. And of course, if there are planes flying over Jerusalem, they're not commercial airliners. So it's like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, are they offensively attacking, defensively attacking? What's happening? And you all your little sensors go up. So today, so quiet. I was somewhere out in nature, and I heard a plane, and I was like, huh. And I noticed that I was somewhat comforted by that, and not because I was like, oh, I'm being protected. No, I mean, it wasn't like I'm being protected. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, we're back to normal. And I was like, okay, that's pretty sick. Like, to turn the situation where you think that warplanes doing anything is normal. Not that I want that. It was just like this psychological association with sound, that it's like, we don't know what normal is. There hasn't been normal, and so I think human beings crave whatever is normal, or whatever is going to be like a routine. And when suddenly the routine changed, it's taking like a really long time to go back to whatever is supposed to. I don't think we go back. I don't think anybody goes back. Certainly not here, certainly not in Gaza, where they go back and there's nothing left. And there, 2 million people that lived in this strip of land are now in 50% less of that land. And so it's just just crazy things. Anyway, so just some updates, because I have not been on in a while. I did some other interviews for other sites, but I've not done my own live, actually. And there's, of course, a million things to catch up on. But the main thing going on right now, just as the war is still, there's still like a ceasefire going on, and there are occasional, like, you'll hear about, like, somebody violated the ceasefire. Israel attacked Hamas, but it's like, but Hamas was shooting at them, or Hamas is not returning the bodies, or what's happened actually in the last couple of days. So now, there were originally 251 hostages. Now we're down to, of the people taken from Israel, from 251 down to 8 as of last night, because Hamas returned 3 more bodies. Now, all the living hostages are back. In case you didn't know about that, most of them are already out of the hospital, like, having recovered. It's been about 3 weeks since they were released. And so now you've got 8 bodies remaining. and there two of them are foreigners, and the rest are Israelis. Now, interesting, today or last night, Hamas delivered three bodies of soldiers that were killed, and that's pretty significant because usually they hold on to soldiers as they're more valuable in exchanges than, let's say, like a woman or a child who could never be considered, uh, collateral in a war. I mean, they're innocent civilians. There's no argument about that. And of course, most of the women and children were out after about 50 days. And then another round of women, some of who were Israeli soldiers, female soldiers, were released over, it was a year plus, so like a year and 4 months after the war started. But now all the living hostages are out and just the remaining. So one of the hostages that was released today was a high-ranking officer, Asaf Hamami. And I actually, I've heard his story and actually stood on the ground where he was killed. I was on Kibbutz Nerim sometime in 2024, and we were visiting the kibbutz. I was doing a story there, and they said this is the spot where Hamami was killed, and they said the name like everybody should know, and then they started talking about his story, and I said, wait a second. Hold on, is he the one? And it turns out I had heard his story even before that. I was interviewing the person who is in charge of all security for the Eshkol region down in the south. And I remember interviewing him the whole story about October 7th. And he said that that morning, his commander, Hamami, was not working. He was off. He had his son. He was going to take his son out, and then something. They got the alert like at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to leave my son with the neighbor, but I'll take him out later. But I want to go check this out," and so. This man tells me that, Hamami, he took a few of his officers and he went to this location, Kibbutz Nerim. Now, if you've been following the news of October 7th and like the aftermath of what happened down in the south, you probably didn't hear of Kibbutz Nerim because it wasn't like Kibbutz Be'eri. It wasn't Kfar Aza or Nir Oz, where many, many people were killed or kidnapped or like destruction. Like people have not moved back to Be'eri or to Kfar Aza. I think also Nir Oz, I'm not 100% sure. But Nerim was not as badly damaged. I don't have to say there weren't attacks and kidnappings and killings. There were. But it was one of the first places, it seems, where the terrorists got through. And so because of that infiltration alert, that is the first place that Hamami headed with two other officers. So he went there and there was a battle. They were suddenly outnumbered. I think there were just 3 Israeli soldiers and I don't know how many Hamas, but they were outnumbered, and the 3 of them were killed. And their bodies were taken immediately. Now, in speaking to several of the people who live on that kibbutz, they said that actually Hamami saved their lives in a way, because when Hamas, or if it was Hamas there or PIJ or whatever, they saw the high-ranking, his uniform, and said like, "Oh, we have a high-ranking officer." They knew we got to get his body back to Gaza. That would probably that's such a success for us that it trumped actually, finishing whatever plans they had for the kibbutz. And there were two other miracles there. Small miracles. One was that a rocket launched by Hamas hit the fence that closes the kibbutz, the gate that goes. So the gate was stuck, so they couldn't actually drive their vehicles through. So that prevented a lot of them from getting in. And wow, I forgot what number three was. But anyway, maybe there wasn't a three, but there were, like, they were saying, like, these were a few of the miracles. But they took the time to get the body back instead of going forward with whatever they had there. Now there were definitely there were ones that remained there, and that they did. They ended up killing a few people there. There were 5 people killed. There were also 5 people kidnapped. And of the 5 people kidnapped, 2 of them were killed in captivity. Now, 2 of the people killed, one on October 7th and one in captivity, were the 2 sons of one woman. Like, there was just like, this woman has 2 sons, and they were both killed. One on October 7th, and one she had as a hostage for months until he was killed as well. So anyway, it was just just unbelievable stories. Like, despite the fact that there were somewhat of miracles there were also, it's just tragic nonetheless. But so Hamami's body was returned last night among the other 2. Another one, Omer Nutra, is an Israeli American who's actually living in Long Island, and came to Israel to join the army when he turned 18, and was considered a lone soldier. His parents are Israeli, and I've heard they've been lobbying for the longest time to get all the hostages back. So anyway, that's where everything stands right now on the hostages. And this is all part of phase 1 of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Is the hostages back, all of them, including the bodies, and Palestinian prisoners being released from Israeli jails. So anyway, this is ongoing right now. In the meantime, Israel has 53% of the Gaza Strip. They have this huge buffer between anywhere where Palestinians are in Gaza and Israel itself, and all controlled by the military. And there have been attacks here and there. There's still tunnels that are popping up. I just saw a video of somebody, Hamas, popping, or somebody, don't know if they're all Hamas, popping up from a tunnel with a rifle or an RPG. I couldn't tell what it was. And then that tunnel got bombed a few seconds later. So anyway, these things are still going on, but it's not breaking the ceasefire entirely. The ceasefire is still holding despite these violations, and so this will continue until somebody declares, okay, done, hostages, prisoners, everybody's released. Now phase 2, and phase 2 is going to be the more challenging part, because with phase 2 you've got who is going to take charge of rebuilding Gaza. Like, will it be Hamas? Hamas says, we're not going anywhere. We're not giving up our weapons. Although President Trump says they will, because they know what's best for them. Will it be another Palestinian government that is put in place in Gaza? Or will it be an international coalition? Now, there is definitely a U.S.-led coalition that is it's north of Gaza. They're not in the Gaza Strip. They will not, the U.S. troops have already, the U.S. said we will not have troops on the ground in Gaza, but the U.S. is heading up this international coalition. Can't remember the name. I know I have it somewhere. Not going to find it fast, am I? It's like, CMCC or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I'll find it for the next video. But they've got this coalition, and they want participation of other countries. So now it's very interesting how the words get redefined. Like, let's say moderate. So Israelis and Israeli leaders and people on the ground, I would say, are looking for the moderate Arab nations to take the lead. Moderate being the UAE, okay, well, I'll give them moderate, and now Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, moderate, wanted in this case by Israel to take over, as opposed to Turkey and Qatar. But the most eager ones so far are Turkey and Qatar. Like Turkey, Erdogan has said we're all in. With we want to redevelop Gaza. They have construction companies. They are ready to send their troops. They're ready to help recover hostage bodies if they can't be found. Because, by the way, Hamas says they can't find all the bodies. They even sent back the remains of a hostage, but it wasn't the new remains. It was a hostage whose body was previously found by the Israeli military over a year ago, but there were just more remains. And then yesterday they sent over, I think, 3 coffins 2 days ago that were not at all Israelis and not at all hostages. And so, so anyway, so Turkey wants to help with that. I'm going to actually find some of what Erdogan has said, very interesting things, and he is actually still very interested. I just saw today where, oh, wait, it's right here. Hold on, I have it. Oh, okay. Anyway, I can't find it. It wasn't right there. Okay. So he's been saying, Erdogan, like, I will go to Gaza and then I will take you. He's been saying to his people. And let me go to this part. So what Israelis are saying, though, is that this having Turkey, who was just the leading critic of Israel during the whole thing. I mean, genocide, Nazis, like Erdogan laid out everything, every criticism that was possible to be had about Israel during this war. He said it, and he was extremely anti, and also, Turkey has not renounced the Muslim Brotherhood. They've housed the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is an offshoot of that, and yet, so everybody is extremely leery of having Turkish forces, armed soldiers in Gaza. One of the analysts I interviewed, Galia Lindenstrauss, said, she said, Turkey is a supporter of Hamas. It will assist Hamas in one way or another. Imagine, like, in the Gaza Strip, if Hamas is like regrouping, which they are anyway, with or without Turkey, that they could actually help them do that. And even if it's not the official government policy, it is definitely, it would be part of like the popular opinion of the country. All right, so Lindenstrauss noted Hamas sustained heavy losses in the 2-year war, but remains armed and in power. And while moderate Arab nations have hesitated to take a more direct role in Gaza, Turkey's involvement in the ceasefire led to it earning a greater, in negotiating the ceasefire, led to it earning a greater role than Israel would have wanted in the rebuilding of Gaza. And here's a direct quote: Israel does not want to see Turkish soldiers in Gaza, but we have to see who else will send forces and how it will evolve. And another person that I interviewed, Eitan Cohen Yaranachuk, who is an expert in Turkish issues. What did he say in contemporary Turkish politics and society? He said that you have to understand the Turkish point of view is that guardianship eventually equals giving you the right to enact your own agenda on the field. And he points to Cyprus and the Turkish takeover of Cyprus in 1974. So anyway, so this is going to come to a head, I think, sooner rather than later, with having Turkey on the border. Now, another thing that these analysts noted was that Turkey is also in Syria. So now, if you look at Israel, like from this is again from the Israeli perspective, to have Turkey on your southern border in Gaza, to have Turkey then also in Syria on your northern border, and in any involvement it has in proxies like in Jordan, in Iraq, in any in wherever they may be, if they have involvement in Lebanon, is basically like a stranglehold, and it's something that Israeli officials will be extremely leery of going forward. On the other hand, President Trump really wants Turkey in there. And he's like complimented their Turkey's involvement in the ceasefire and in helping move things fast, which is probably true because Turkey and Qatar do have more of an influence with Hamas. So anyway, it's quite the conundrum coming up. But then that's a good segue to look at what's happening in Lebanon. Now, despite the ceasefire, which is almost 1 year between Hezbollah and Israel, and Hezbollah is the Iranian proxy nation state terror group that is based in southern Lebanon, which is huge. I mean, they're much bigger than Hamas. And they have declared this, they declared the ceasefire with Israel about a year ago, right before then the regime change in Syria. But since then, despite the ceasefire, there's this thing called Shigrat Chisulim. I read it in Hebrew. I cannot think of a really good translation that sounds as good in English, but it's like the routine assassinations. And it's just like routine that almost every single day there are attacks by Israel on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, like almost every single day, not an exaggeration. So I'm going to read you a little bit about what's happening in Lebanon, because there's somewhere else where the U.S. is involved right now in trying to get Hezbollah to disarm, and it is apparently not going as well or as fast as anybody wanted. And the envoys, the U.S. envoys, are there all the time. They were just there again this week. So one of them is Tom Barak. And what did he say this week? He said, Israel continues to strike in Lebanon because there are still thousands of rockets in southern Lebanon that threaten it. He also noted Hezbollah's budget is bigger than that of the Lebanese army. So here are some numbers. The Lebanese army has 60,000 soldiers. I'm sorry I didn't verify this information before. I took it from a trusted source and I didn't verify this. So let's say this is true. Lebanese army has 60,000 soldiers. Hezbollah has 40,000. It's almost even. A soldier in the Lebanese army apparently earns $275 a month. Hezbollah operative earns $2,200 a month. Lebanese army soldiers have AK-47 rifles and old Jeeps. Hezbollah has 15 to 20,000 rockets and missiles. I think it might be more. They had there were estimates that they had 150,000 before the war started. I think they launched I don't remember what it was. Wow, this is like a year ago now, but I mean, tens of thousands. They could still have 100,000. Even if they launched half of them, they would have probably more than this 20,000. So anyway, if that's the case, that's very interesting. Now, there has been something like that going on as well with these targeted assassinations in Gaza, and the Gazans are calling it like like I said, it was Shigrat Chisulim, which is like routine assassinations, and they're calling it like routine Lebanon, or it's like the Lebanon routine has now come to us because they're reading the news too, like they know what's happening there, and the same thing's been happening in Gaza, probably not as much, but I just saw right before I started this on the news that there is a concern that there will be escalation in Lebanon. So here I started this program saying that that we're lurching back to normal and we're trying to get back to normal, and we might, because we might just have another war again, which seems to be more normal than not having a war since nobody knows how to deal with not having one these days. So if something happens, I mean, of course, that's why you've got the U.S. envoys. There's Morgan Ortagus and Tom Barak that are in Lebanon all the time now, trying to get Hezbollah to agree to disarm, which of course they have vowed they will not. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Now, in the meantime, like I said, Israel hasn't for 1 second let down its guard regarding Hezbollah operatives and weapons stocks and stockpiles in Lebanon. But it has picked up the pace in the last couple of days. I don't like to be a warmonger, but it definitely has picked up the pace. And I just realized that Jerry West is here. And Jerry, I wanted to say hi. Actually, like the night after I met you in person, I wanted to do a live and be like, oh my gosh, shout out to Jerry for finding me in the middle of that concert and saying hi. I really appreciate it. And it was so wonderful to meet you in person and your husband and your friends. And I know you're coming back, so message me in advance so we will definitely meet up. But it was really like warmed my heart to meet you in person. And thank you. Thank you for reaching out. Okay, so I mean, there's news in Africa, and I think we should all be paying attention to that. Slaughters like crazy in Sudan and Nigeria, and that's extremely important for us all to know about and to act on. Yeah, so anyway, that's news from here, and I'm sure there'll be more. And yeah, stay tuned because Lord knows what's happening. Anyway, thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you next time. So